urges in trying to surface created the nervous disorders in his patients. Freud stressed the importance of early childhood experiences, believing that personality was formed in the first 6 years of life. If there were significant problems, those problems must have begun in the early years. Some of his well-known followers were Alfred Adler, Carl Jung, Kevin Orne, and his own daughter, Anna Freud. Anna Freud began what became known as the ego movement in psychology, which produced one of the best-known psychologists in the study of personality development, Erik Erikson. We're going to obviously write these names down. They will be important for us. Freud's ideas are still influential today, although in a somewhat modified form. He had a number of followers, and many of them became famous by altering his theory to fit their own viewpoint, but his basic ideas are still discussed and debated today. Let's finish now with Pavlov, Watson, and the dawn of behaviorism. Ivan Pavlov, like Freud, was not a psychologist. He was a Russian physiologist who showed that a reflex, an involuntary reaction, could be caused to occur in response to a totally new and formally unrelated stimulus. While working with dogs, for example, Pavlov observed that salivation reflex, which is normally produced by actually having food in one's mouth, could be caused to occur in response to a totally new stimulus, in this case the sound of a ticking metronome. At the onset of his experiment, Pavlov would turn on the metronome, give the dogs food, and they would salivate. After several repetitions, the dogs would salivate to the sound of the metronome before the food was presented, a learned or conditioned reflexive response. This process was called conditioning, an important term. By the early 1900s, psychologist John B. Watson had tired of the arguing among the structuralists. He challenged the functionalist viewpoint as well as psychoanalysis with his own science of behavior, quote unquote, or behaviorism. Watson wanted to bring psychology back to a focus on scientific inquiry, and he felt that the only way to do that was to ignore the whole consciousness issue and focus only on observable behavior, something that could be directly seen and measured. He had read of Pavlov's work and thought that conditioning would form the basis of his new perspective on behaviorism. Watson was certainly aware of Freud's work and his views on unconscious repression. Freud believed that all behavior stems from unconscious motivation, whereas Watson believed that all behavior is learned. Freud also stated that a phobia, an irrational fear, is really a symptom of an underlying repressed conflict and cannot be cured without years of psychoanalysis to uncover and understand the repressed material. Watson believed that phobias are learned through the process of conditioning, and he set out to prove it. Along with his colleague Rosalind Ryer, he took a baby known as Albert B, or Little Albert, taught him to fear a white rat by making a loud, scary noise every time the infant saw the rat, until finally just seeing the rat caused the infant to cry and become fearful. Even though Little Albert was not afraid of the rat at the start, the experiment worked very well. In fact, Little Albert became afraid of other fuzzy things, including a rabbit, a dog, a sealskin coat. Watson wanted to prove that all behavior was a result of stimulus-response relationship, such as that described by Pavlov. Because Freud and his ideas about unconscious motivation were becoming a dominant force, Watson felt the need to show the world that such a simpler explanation could be found. Although scaring a baby sounds a little cruel, you think, he felt that the advancement of the science of behavior was worth the baby's relatively brief discomfort. Watson's experiment with Little Albert could not be conducted today for ethical reasons, and ethics in experimentation will be discussed in more depth later in the chapter. A graduate student of Watson named Mary Cover Jones decided to repeat Watson and Rayer's study, but added training that would cancel out the phobic reaction of the baby to the white rat. She duplicated the Little Albert study with another child. This was little Peter, successfully conditioning Peter to be afraid of a white rabbit. Then she began a process of counter-conditioning, in which Peter was exposed to the white rabbit from a distance while eating a food that he really liked. The pleasure of the food outweighed the fear of the faraway rabbit. Day by day, the situation was repeated, with the rabbit becoming brought closer each time until Peter was no longer afraid of the rabbit. Jones went on to become one of the early pioneers of behavior therapy. Behaviorism is a major perspective in psychology today. It also has influenced the development of other perspectives, such as cognitive psychology. Okay, guys, we're ready for section 1.3. We'll come back to it in a few minutes. Thank you.